You know what I've noticed? A lot of our 7 deadly sins usually have enormous power. But there is a lot of repercussion when they use this enormous power. For instance, let's look at Escanor. Escanor, he can only be strong at certain points of the day, and mainly it reaches a certain peak when the sun is like the highest in the sky. And he has enormous power to where nobody could pretty much stand up to Escanor. He would wipe you out like fucking nothing, like you're a piece of shit. And then he turns up after that time passes, he gets progressively weaker in the day when it gets dark. Or if he's in a dark place with no direct sunlight, hitting his body. So Escanor, even though he's enormous and, like, strong in power, like his power scale is insane, it's only for a brief moment. And then, on top of that, we have, let's say, Bon. Bon, we found out very recently, especially with his fight with the Ten Commandments, is that he has a limiter on how much strength he can take from someone until it starts, having a toll on his body, and then he, has to let that go, and then he can't really do nothing after that. So we found out Bon, he can have enormous amount of power, but he has a limit, and then he can't hold it for that long. So, once again, another character like that. But then, in this chapter, King is also in a very similar situation as Escanor and Bon. Let's think about this, okay? King, we've already seen examples of this, and how he has a toll on his body when he does stuff like this. And his power is insane. This chapter really goes to showcase how strong King is. Like, his power level is ridiculous. What he did to the representative, okay, of the Fairy King, and just wiped it out like that, and he had to obliterate everything, like he couldn't let it regenerate, that was ridiculous. That is a lot of power that King had to use to take something like that out. And I'm not going to fault King. His strength was insane. But because of the strength he used, he's pretty much out of the fight. Like, he cannot fight right now. He's down for the count. Like, if someone could walk up to him and just slit his throat, it would be that easy, because he can't fight back at this moment. And because of this, I like how the 7 deadly sins, or the recent events we've seen from, the second half of the 7 deadly sins, a lot of the powers I've been getting more in-depth with, like Nakaba Sensei's trying to dive into when it comes to our characters. I like how he's adding repercussions to the characters, and why they can't use these absurd strong abilities, and why they weren't introduced a while back. For instance, let's look at, Hendrickson, for instance. King not doing a lot of this type of stuff against Hendrickson makes a lot of sense, because, it has a toll on his body, and there could be a lot of bad things that could possibly happen, and, there's different circumstances at the time when, King didn't use these abilities, so, it explains a lot, and I love how Nakaba Sensei is kind of adding this stuff in to add more clarification to why these abilities couldn't be showcased in the past. But then on top of that, I love how King is actually not able to use this massive amount of power all the time. It's like what I said about Escanor. Escanor is a fucking awesome character. He's like probably my favorite character in the 7 deadly sins. But he's a character I was worried about, and I am worried about, would be misused to just take down any opponent that's just too fucking strong. And I love how he, has this huge fucking weakness about him. It makes him a balanced character. And seeing King have this amount of power to be able to do what he did, and then he's weakened, and he really can't do it anymore, he's just down for the count, it adds a balance to his character. Now, I'm not going to say that there's not going to come a point in time in the series to where King could probably, spam fuck the shit out of all that type of stuff with, his sacred treasure in the future, but at this time, though, before King gets a power-up, maybe his wings, his fairy wings that might allow him to use it, I believe this is really great. I love what Nakaba Sensei is doing with King's character, because it adds him on this, limiter to where he can't just go all out and then wreck everybody and he gets destroyed when he goes all out. It adds it to where, like, he can't use this enormous amount of power all the time, and it adds it for a more interesting battle and where he has to use tactics, or, and, adds more, I guess, threat to the series. Now, past that, let's look at Diane, okay? So this chapter kind of concludes King fighting his opponent, the other Fairy King, and now Diane needs to pretty much fight the King of the Giants. And Diane at this moment, or in the series, she's probably the weakest 7 deadly sins. Yeah, she's one of the weakest sins. There's no doubt about it. If we look at all the potential, Gowther, he's not as strong physically, but still, thinking about everything, I say Gowther is on a little bit of a higher status than Diane, since he was a previous 10 Commandment. So, Diane at this time, she needs a power-up, obviously. She needs a power-up. She needs to be able to master her earth manipulation, which was showcased a while back, and she definitely needs to become a lot stronger, because at this time, out of all the other sins, she is the weakest. Yeah, there's no question about that. I mean, if you compare her to what Bond did, you compare what Keen just did in this chapter, you compare to what Merlin does, you compare to even some things Elizabeth does. It's pretty fucking ridiculous, actually. I mean, Elizabeth could heal people and save them and all that. I mean, it's ridiculous. And then, I mean, Hawk as well. I mean, he even got a fucking power-up, kind of. I mean, he's absorbing things when he eats them and, you know, and stuff like that. And then on top of that, I mean, we get to see what's going on with our other sins or other characters. They've gotten power-ups, and as it progresses on, Diane's kind of the one that's lacking the most at the moment. And I'm glad that she's going to be getting a fight for herself. She's going to be fighting one of the representatives of the Giant King, or Balor, to be exact. And for her to be fighting him, I wonder if she's going to be able to take it on by herself, and also will she be able to kind of get stronger and be able to use earth manipulation in some way, which would be very exciting, because it's been a while since Diane has actually had a fight, I think, to herself. And, well, the last fight Diane really had, I think, was probably the Galther fight. Now that I think about it, it was Galther versus Diane. That was the last true fight I think Diane had a solo fight. But even then, again, it was kind of interrupted, and Galther did some foul play. So, overall, I'm very, very interested in this upcoming fight, because I wonder how Diane's going to handle herself, and if she's going to get stronger and being able to remember King in any way, because I really want to see that connection between King and Diane progress. I mean, we were already there to where King was about to finally announce his love to Diane, Diane, vice versa, going to announce her love to King, and then it was taken away thanks to Galther. So, hopefully, Diane remembers very soon, because I would love to see that romantic, you know, plot point kind of progress. So yeah, that's pretty much what it comes to this chapter. A very interesting chapter. Oh yeah, this chapter also clarifies that the fairy that I talked about in the last chapter is definitely related to this, you know, fairy, the original Fairy King. So that is confirmed. We saw the name mentioned and all that, so yeah, there's no more speculation. There definitely is a very close connection with these two fairies. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. You all have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.